It is an honor to share some words of Torah with this illustrious community. Thank you for inviting me. Here in West Hartford, which is in the United States for our international alumni, I have the privilege of studying each Wednesday the haftara in depth. We set out each Wednesday to understand the haftara in its context in the Navi, but also to understand why it was selected to pair with the parasha that we're reading that week. And what message do our rabbis or Chazal trying to echo, emphasize, or foil from our parasha through the selection of the haftara? This Shabbat, we turn our eyes to Malachim Bet, to Kings 2, and to the story of 4 metzoraim and the miraculous salvation of Shomron from siege and destruction. As our story unfolds, we encounter 4 metzoraim caught up literally on the periphery of society between 2 warring parties, and they have to choose between an uncertain fate at the hands of the armies of Aram or a certain death by famine in the city. Miraculously, as they approach the battle encampments of Aram, they find that they have been deserted and that they remain filled with provisions and food after a miracle from God causes the entire army to flee. They ultimately decide to share this great news and good fortune with the king and the city. And the king, who reluctantly agrees to check out these claims, ultimately realizes that the siege has been lifted and provisions desperately and direly needed have been deposited on their doorstep. This is one of few stories that actually involves Saras in the Navi, making it, at least on its surface, a quite appropriate and apropos choice for both the parshiot of Tazria and Metzora. But beyond the obvious tie-in, this story has been chosen as the haftara as it highlights a seemingly minor theme that runs at the heart of our parshiot and reinforces its importance for us as individuals, but also on a communal and national level. As individuals, we read the haftara and we see it amplifies an important and meaningful message to the Metzora, him or herself. The process of coming back, of being reinvigorated and purifying the Metzora is not just a siddur for kapara, a process for atonement or a cleansing of a chet, of a sin. If anything, much of that should have been accomplished in the period of bidud, of isolation. Part of the process is also a rehabilitation of the individual and a reminder to them that despite their failings and their predicament, they have immense value and tremendous capacity, that they have great potential and incredible possibility. The haftara foretells that ultimately it is the metzoraim that bring about the miraculous salvation of the people. And perhaps the most poignant point is the true turning point of the entire story for all of Shomron is the moment when the metzoraim realize that they can be responsible on a more moral and ethical realm, that they have agency, and that they too can be kenim again. This notion is already embedded in the tahara process, which we read about in our parshiot, and is magnified by Chazal through choosing to connect our parshiot with this story in the haftara. As the Chidushei Arim notes, questioning the inclusion of the Eitz Erez, the cedar wood, the tall, mighty tree, which seems not to fit with the other more well-known items included in the purification process, which symbolize shpelut, loneliness, and humility. We choose this tall object to show and remind them of their incredible potential that still exists. This is true in the use of 2 birds, one as a classical korban, as vicarious sacrifice, but as a second, kept alive as a model of life for the recovered Metzora, to live out from this point on a life full of vitality and vigor, of possibility and opportunity. Rav Moshe Lichtenstein notes in his analysis of our haftara that Saras in our context, in our story, and more generally in the Nevi'im Rishonim, is a symptom is a symbol of a failure to see beyond the natural order, to see beyond the everyday facts. It is a reminder to see the spiritual, the miraculous, the divine hand in all events. Taken one step further here too, Saras in our story is a nudge to see beyond the surface and to see into the heart and soul of the recovering Metzora, even the most downtrodden, the most marginalized, the most lowly Jew. This ideal then calls out to us as communities and as a nation to embrace this notion in all our dealings with every member of society, of our community, and our nation. As we read these parshiot and the haftara this week, at a moment where with God's help and kindness, we are slowly emerging from our own prolonged bidud isolation across the globe, let us internalize and broadcast this message for ourselves, our families, and our communities. Let us herald a renewed belief in the incredible potential, no matter who we are, no matter what the last year or years have been like, and let us use it to inspire us to reach higher, to push further, and to help manifest Yeshuat Hashem, the full redemption, just like those 4 metzoraim, b'mehera b'yameinu, soon in our time.